This girl just sent the most expensive email of her life. It was 2 words: I quit. The weight of 1,000 spreadsheets vanished. For the first time in years, she felt free. She had a dream, a modest savings account, and a mountain of unspent creative energy. But before the work could begin, she encountered the most dangerous lie in modern economics. She convinced herself that a professional career required professional-grade tools. No, the best tools. Studies call this symbolic self-completion. We buy the gear to fill the hole where our talent should be. She wasn't spending money. She was investing in her future self, or so she told her brain. The friction of starting a business was replaced by the high of unboxing new possibilities. But as the boxes emptied, a cold, clinical reality began to settle into the room. The identity equipment was all there. The studio was perfect, but her bank account was bleeding. She had the tools of a professional, but the bank balance of a person in crisis. The trap was set, and she was about to find out exactly how much perfection really costs. Morning arrived with a cold realization. The equipment didn't come with a manual for her courage. She had the resolution to film a masterpiece, but she didn't have a single word to say. This is the intimidation of the high end. When your tools are too good, your mistakes feel twice as loud. Instead of creating, she retreated into productivity research, a sophisticated form of procrastination that feels like work. Her brain was caught in a dopamine loop, searching for the next missing piece to solve her fear. She posted a photo of her new studio. The likes poured in. Her brain registered a false victory by announcing her identity as a POC, creator. Before creating anything, she received the social reward prematurely. But the algorithm of her bank account didn't care about her digital applause. The first interest charge hit. The high of the unboxing was replaced by a heavy, physical weight in her chest. The camera wasn't a tool anymore. It was a $2,000 witness to her growing failure. She started micro-budgeting her food to pay for the macro mistake sitting in the other room. She was now sacrificing her daily nutrition to subsidize a dream she was too intimidated to start. This is the sunk cost fallacy in its most lethal form. She was throwing her lifetime after her money. The free girl who quit her job was now a slave to the object she bought to free her. She bought another course, another essential plug-in, another layer of frictionless spending to mask her terror. She was drowning in the paradox of choice. Too many premium options, zero actual output. The dust on the lens was the first physical symptom of a dying ambition. The clean slate she wanted was now covered in the ink of high-interest debt. The identity equipment was shiny. Her future, however, was beginning to look very dark. She had built a stage, but she had forgotten how to be the actor. To understand her financial paralysis, we must examine the neurochemical war inside her brain. The conflict between her prefrontal cortex and her limbic system forced this irrational purchase. Her brain released more dopamine during the transaction than it ever would during the work. For her limbic system, purchasing the camera acted as a chemical substitute for becoming a filmmaker. Psychologists classify this exact financial trap as symbolic self-completion theory. It destroys young, ambitious creators. When we lack competence in a new identity, we unconsciously buy expensive symbols to bridge the gap. This introduces performance anxiety paralysis. The premium equipment completely removed her psychological safety net for failure. By artificially raising the stakes with expensive tools, the perceived risk of producing bad work skyrockets. She engineered a high-pressure environment where every single beginner mistake felt like a catastrophic financial loss. This fatal psychological imbalance triggers a severe emotional avoidance behavior known scientifically as task aversion. Because the premium gear demands immediate perfection, the safest cognitive choice is to simply do nothing. She fell victim to productivity theater, actively mistaking the friction of purchasing for actual creative momentum. In modern behavioral economics, this endless loop of preparation without execution is perfectly labeled active procrastination. She felt deeply exhausted at the end of every day, yet absolutely nothing had been created. This generates a lethal cognitive blind spot heavily studied in modern consumer behavior and identity mapping models. It is the endowment effect twisting inward. She valued the unearned potential significantly more than reality. Her core identity was no longer tied to her human creativity, but to her capital assets. When those capital assets failed to magically generate success, her self-worth plummeted into a severe psychological deficit. The planning fallacy convinced her brain that acquiring premium tools would automatically bypass the steep learning curve. As the shiny novelty rapidly faded, the hedonic treadmill reset her baseline happiness back to zero. The intense dopamine high completely wore off, leaving nothing but the cold mathematics of compound interest. This represents the true, textbook definition of the sunk cost fallacy slowly eating a human soul. She absolutely couldn't sell the equipment without admitting defeat, so she kept it as a monument. It was a tragic monument to a future self that never actually arrived to do the work. The growing cognitive dissonance between who she desperately wanted to be and who she was became unbearable. Her mental bandwidth was entirely consumed by the intense financial survival of her own impulsive decisions. This exact phenomenon is known as scarcity mindset, drastically lowering her fluid cognitive intelligence over time. By attempting to artificially bypass the friction of learning with money, she engineered her own spectacular failure. Her prefrontal cortex was completely paralyzed by the sheer weight of the modern identity equipment fallacy. The empirical science is absolute. She didn't buy a head start. She purchased an invisible emotional prison. 3 months passed, and the financial reality finally crashed through her carefully constructed psychological walls. The heavy silence in the room was completely shattered by the arrival of a final notice. The illusion of the clean slate evaporated, leaving her trapped beneath the crushing weight of debt. Her grand investment in her future self had successfully bankrupted her actual present reality. The expensive camera sat on the desk, functioning entirely as a silent monument to her failure. The severe financial anxiety began leaking into her sleep, triggering a chronic, exhausting insomnia cycle. The neurochemical dead loop had hijacked her nervous system, forcing her into a permanent fight-or-flight state. The very tools designed to unlock her creative passion had effectively assassinated it instead. To sustain the illusion of the premium equipment, she sacrificed her most basic biological needs. The physical toll of the invisible financial stress was visibly manifesting in her exhausted body. She watched her peers move forward, while she remained entirely paralyzed by her own purchases. The profound social shame of her failed reinvention forced her into deep, painful, emotional isolation. The desperate attempt to return the gear was met with the harsh reality of depreciation. The secondary market instantly wiped out 40% of her net worth in a single day. The psychological trap was perfectly complete. She had absolutely no money, no job, and no art. It was the lowest possible cognitive point. The shiny illusion had entirely shattered into painful reality. The identity she tried to purchase online was officially dead, leaving behind a massive bill. But within this absolute rock bottom, a vital layer of painful self-awareness finally began to form. She finally understood that you cannot buy the necessary friction of human growth with a credit card. The empty gym memberships, the unopened courses, the untouched gear. It is exactly the same trap. We have all attempted to purchase a shortcut to our dreams and paid the heavy price. If this sounds painfully familiar, please understand that you are absolutely not alone in this fight. The invisible psychological forces designed to drain your bank account can actually be rewritten and defeated. And uncovering those hidden traps is exactly why this specific channel exists in the first place. We dissect the neurofinancial trap so you can finally stop paying for illusions and start building. The breakdown is officially over. Now it is time to look at the data-backed scientific cure. To escape this financial paralysis, we must ruthlessly hack the brain's anticipatory reward system entirely. Step 1 is implementing the minimum viable setup. You must aggressively manufacture artificial environmental friction. By forcing yourself to start with the worst possible tools, you immediately neutralize performance anxiety. The psychological pressure of a $5 notebook is effectively zero, allowing for pure creative execution. Neuroscientists refer to this as constraint-induced plasticity. Severe limitation absolutely forces the human brain to adapt. Step 2 requires a mandatory 72-hour identity detox before any major future equipment purchase. This specific time delay systematically starves the limbic system of its immediate chemical dopamine spike. It forcibly brings your analytical prefrontal cortex back online to calculate the actual opportunity cost. Step 3 is adopting a strict output-to-input ratio. You must literally earn your future upgrades. For every 10 hours of documented, completed work, you unlock $50 of equipment budget. This scientifically aligns your financial spending directly with your actual behavioral competence and skill acquisition. She finally understood this mechanism. She boxed up the premium illusions and returned every piece. She sat down at the quiet desk with her old, heavily scratched 5-year-old computer. The heavy financial anchor was entirely gone. For the first time in months, she typed. She traded the toxic synthetic dopamine of consumerism for the deep neurochemical fulfillment of creation. She rebuilt her shattered professional identity not with a credit card, but with raw effort. True financial freedom isn't found in a frictionless checkout line at 2 in the morning. It is found in the quiet, unglamorous discipline of refusing to purchase a fake reality. Save your money, save your time, and you might just save your life.